Okay, we'll begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Caroline. I'm an ACA. Welcome to the Limerick Traditions Workshop. And a special welcome to those of you joining us at Limerick for the very first time. So in this session this evening, today, this morning, whatever time it is, wherever you are, we're going to have 4 speakers who will take it in turn to share their experience, strength, and hope with regard to the 12 traditions of ACA. Now, just to let you know that we are recording this session, but only until the end of the speaker section, and they will be switching off the recording, and hopefully we'll have some time for shares and maybe some questions. All right, so I'm going to start us off by reading the problem. So Heather, if you could share the problem there so we can all see it. Great. Many of us found that we had several characteristics in common as a result of being brought up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional household. We had come to feel isolated and uneasy with other people, especially authority figures. To protect ourselves, we became people pleasers, even though we lost our own identities in the process. All the same, we would mistake any personal criticism as a threat. We either became alcoholics or practiced other addictive behavior ourselves, or married them, or both. Failing that, we found other compulsive personalities, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick need for abandonment. We live life from the standpoint of victims. Having an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, we prefer to be concerned with ourselves rather than with others rather than ourselves. We got guilt feelings when we stood up for ourselves rather than giving in to others. Thus, we became reactors rather than actors, letting others take the initiative. We were dependent personalities, terrified of abandonment, willing to do almost anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to be abandoned emotionally. Yet we kept choosing insecure relationships because they matched our childhood relationship with alcoholic or dysfunctional parents. These symptoms of the family disease of alcoholism or other dysfunction made us co-victims, those who take on the characteristics of the disease without necessarily ever taking a drink. We learned to keep our feelings down as children and kept them buried as adults. As a result of this conditioning, we confused love with pity, tending to love those we could rescue. Even more self-defeating, we became addicted to excitement in all our affairs, preferring constant upset to workable relationships. This is a description, not an indictment. So we'll have a look at the 12 traditions now. Tradition 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on ACA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority. A loving God is expressed in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for membership in ACA is a desire to recover from the effects of growing up in an alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional family. 4, each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to the adult child who still suffers. 6, an ACA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the ACA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every ACA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Number 8, adult children of alcoholics should remain forever non-professional, but our service centres may employ special workers. Number 9, ACA as such ought never be organised, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, adult children of alcoholics has no opinion on outside issues, hence the ACA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, films, and other public media. And number 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. So we have one final reading now before we start the speaker section, and that is, we can read Tony as 12 steps. Yeah. Tony A's 12 steps. 1, we admitted we were powerless over the effects of living with alcoholism and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could bring us clarity. 3, we made a decision to practice self-love and to trust in a higher power of our understanding. 4, we made a searching and blameless inventory of our parents because, in essence, we had become them. 5, we admitted to our higher power, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our childhood abandonment. 6, we were entirely ready to begin the healing process with the aid of our higher power. 7, we humbly asked our higher power to help us with our healing process. We became willing to accept our own unconditional love by understanding that our higher power loves us unconditionally. 10, we continued to take personal inventory and to love and approve of ourselves. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with our higher power, praying only for knowledge of its will for us and the power to carry it out. And finally, 12, we have had a spiritual awakening as a result of taking these steps, and we continue to love ourselves and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So our final reading, a little meditation. Higher power, I am your trusted servant seeking to support my ACA group and its primary purpose. Please remind me that the life of my program and my own recovery depends upon my willingness to put the group's welfare above my own will. Help me recognize unity. So, thanks, Heather. I'm going to introduce you to the speakers shortly. Before that, though, some housekeeping. Just to ask you, it goes without saying, I know, but I'm going to say it anyway, just to ask you to all remain muted. If you have your camera switched off, you might consider just briefly switching it on so that we know that we're dealing with a human being. You don't have to keep it on for the entire meeting. And if you're unable to switch on your camera, there are some situations with signal and so on and so forth. If you can't switch it on, just send me a quick message in the chat and just let me know. I'd appreciate that. Okay. So I just want to say a brief few words. Most of you know that I am the secretary at Limerick, but my 2-year rotation has come to an end now. And we're going to be looking for a new secretary to take over the role. I just wanted to say that I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago when I took on the role. I've had many years of experience of being in service in 12-step recovery, but this experience, the last 2 years as Secretary of Limerick, it was completely different. And it was by far the best experience I've ever had. And I would not have been able to do that without the help of the traditions. The traditions enabled me to use my voice, to speak up and to speak out. Whenever I had to make a decision, I always had to think about what was best for the group, and the traditions showed me the way. So I read somewhere that being in service without acknowledging the traditions is like sponsoring someone without having taken the 12 steps. It just won't work. It will eventually lead to chaos. And to me, the sole purpose of the traditions is unity. Unity is our aim. It shines above everything. So now I can't say that I know everything there is to know about the traditions. In fact, I know I've loads to learn. So that's why I'm here tonight, to learn. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for this evening, who will speak about traditions 1, 2, and 3. So please welcome Jimmy.
Thanks, Caroline. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jimmy, and I'm an adult that grew up in an alcoholic dysfunctional home. And the only qualification that I have here this evening to speak on the 12 traditions is because I'm a member of ACA and I have lived these 12 traditions. I've experienced them even when I didn't want to know about them. Yet they were there in front of me at every meeting I ever went to. And I now choose to believe that the 12 steps and the 12 traditions is my higher power hiding in plain sight. And the first time I ever heard anybody talking about the traditions, was in 1984. I was on my way to Galway. I had fallen passionately and obsessively in love with a woman that I met at an AA convention. I was 28 at the time and she was 21. And she was living in another part of Ireland. And I would decide spontaneously to get out of bed and come to where she was living in Galway, or hitchhike, as they would say in America. And I would just go. I didn't have any job. I didn't have any money in my pocket, but I was so in love with this woman that she became like a drug. And on my way one day, this AA member pulled up, and he was an old timer in AA. Now, an old timer in AA was somebody that was, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 years sober. And I was in a hurry to get to where I wanted to go. And he pulled in, he said, Jimmy, he said, where are you off to? I says, I'm off to Galway. He says, I'm going as far as Ennis. Now, Ennis is about 40, 50 miles. And I said, that'll do, that'll be grand. I said, that'll be okay. So he said, before I do that, he says, I have to go home and get something to eat. I want to have my breakfast. And I went, oh, Jesus, here we go. Now I said to myself. So we went back to his house and he said to me, do you want an egg and some toast? Oh, well, says I. He said, will you have a cup of tea? No, 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 I won't. And he says, go on. And it was a bit like Father Ted, go on, go on, go on. So I sat down with this guy anyway, and he was asking me all about, how am I getting on in my recovery? And I said, I'm getting on grand. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be talking to you, just eat up your egg, eat your toast, and we get on the road. I need to get to Galway. And I was obsessed. I was single-minded to get to Galway. So after about a half an hour, he said, come on, we go on. I literally practically ran out. He says, hold on. He says, before you go, he says, I want to show you something. I went, oh, Jesus, here we go. And I said, so he says, come in here to the sitting room. He says, I want to show you something. So he opened up this box and all this AA paraphernalia. He said, oh, God, I'm thinking to myself. He said, you see these here? He says, they're the original 12 traditions. He said, Lois gave me those. I said, Lois who? Bill Wilson's wife. All right. And when he mentioned Bill Wilson, it was just just a little bit. And he says, they're the long form, he said, of the 12 traditions. And I was thinking long form, short form, and not fucking interested. All I want to do is to go to Galway. But yet it had sunk in there. And he mentioned to me about the 33 signposts. And this is what I have never forgotten. He said, we are so undisciplined that our higher power gave us 33 signposts, 12 steps, 12 traditions, and 9 slogans. And why that has relevance, it didn't have relevance to the 28-year-old. But jumping forward in time, it now has relevance, particularly to today. And I'm grateful that I had experienced that. So even if something doesn't have any relevance, well, you might think something doesn't have any relevance here tonight, it may have relevance in the far distant future when all of us old fogies are dead and gone. And I'm going to talk about my experience of the first 3 traditions. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and these traditions came directly from the lived experience from the first 100 and all the mistakes that they made. And it has been a profound privilege to have done my own research on the life of Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and another guy that I came across about 10 or 15 years ago that did the PhD, his PhD on the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, because nobody had ever thought to do it. There was a guy by the name of Ernie Kurtz, and he's all over YouTube talking about the 12 traditions and how he experienced the 12 traditions as well. And this is my experience. I was a member of an AA group in Limerick, and I was constantly bringing up at our group conscience that we needed to do a 4th and 5th step inventory of the group, because there were people in the group that were controlling the group and manipulating the group. And once you do a 4th and 5th inventory, it's basically outs the control freaks. And when I say out, I don't mean expose them toxically or anything like that. They come to the realization that they may be over controlling, but the group kept kicking the can down the road, and they refused to do a fourth and fifth inventory. So at one of the group conscience meetings, I decided to the group, and I made it clear to the group that the first tradition, I said, there's no unity in this group. And because there's no unity in this group, I'm not recovering. And I have to put my recovery first. So I'm going to seek out another group where there is unity in the group. And I left that group. And like, I will always get a good feel for a group that's literally rooted in its own recovery. And I'm delighted that I made that decision. And a couple of months ago, a member contacted me from the group and asked me would I come back. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going back to that group. I said, I have no intention. He said, the group is falling asunder. I said, maybe it needs to fall asunder. Maybe that's what the group actually needs in order for people to recover in that group. Because this is just my own personal opinion. If you have people controlling and manipulating the group will eventually fall asunder anyway. So that's a fabulous, fabulous experience. Now, my second encounter was in Limerick ACA. A couple of months ago, we were having problems. I can't even remember what it was about, to tell you the truth, but it came up at group conscience. And the group was united. I had felt the unity in the group. And that was really, really, really powerful. And we here in Limerick, when we started Limerick off first, we spoke about the second tradition, our leaders, our trusted servants. But we wanted to bring in a loving God as it would express itself. And we've encountered issues and situations in this group. And we have been conscious of what would a higher power do? What would a loving higher power bring to this group conscience? And I've seen it firsthand. I really and truly have. It's so, so powerful to witness that because it anchors my recovery into the group, the unity of the group and the leaders in the group. But they're trusted by the other members to do what's in the best interest of the group, not for the self. And there's such power in that. And the third tradition, I'm going to go back to about, must be 30 years ago, when I set up Limerick ACA face-to-face meetings back in the 1990s. And back then, the ACA members, or it was known as ACOA back then, did not want alcoholics in recovery coming to ACOA. They didn't want people from Al-Anon coming to ACOA, and it was brought up at the group conscience. And we didn't have a group conscience meeting until the group was about 6 months old. And I suggested that we have a group. Now, I had never divulged to any of the people in the group that I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm glad that I didn't do that. It came up at the group conscience meeting. There was one woman there particularly. Her parents had been in recovery in AA, and she used to share at the meetings that there was more damage done to her by her parents' recovery than there was in drinking, because they were forever giving out about what Jack said at the meeting or what Mary said at the meeting. And that one, Mary, she's not a real alcoholic at all. And that Tom guy, he's a pain in the arse. And this is what she listened to all of her life growing up. She didn't remember her parents drinking, but she remembered the destructiveness of their recovery and how they broke people's anonymity and spoke about other people. And she did not want these people, these same people that were in recovery, coming to our meetings. So I just quietly said, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they were shocked. The group were shocked. And I could see that they even felt a bit betrayed. They felt like I should have said something earlier on. But something inside of me said, Jimmy, don't break your anonymity. Not yet. It's not the right time. I choose to believe now that that was my higher power intuitively speaking to me. And I'm not saying now that I have a hotline to God, but when I mentioned it, that I am a member of AA, one of them said, but Jimmy, you're different. And I said, I'm no different than the members of AA that are coming here and want to seek help from us because they grew up in an alcoholic dysfunctional home themselves. And they saw that ACA was completely different to Alcoholics Anonymous, the depth of sharing and the courage to talk about how they felt. And there was no timekeepers back then even. And if Limerick decided that it was going to go down that way of timesharers, I would have to find another group. Because my personal recovery would depend upon the unity of the group. I hope it never, ever, ever comes to that. And I pray that it will never, ever, ever come to that. But this group adheres to the 12 traditions, and I have seen it in action. And that is absolutely fantastic. And there's 2 minutes left now. We have a time clock up here because each of us had decided we were going to talk for 15 minutes. But I'm actually going to wrap it up now because like I don't need to share anymore but that's my personal experience on the traditions, and I'm looking forward now to hearing everybody else's. And Caroline, thanks for your service. And I have seen how you've changed in this past 2 years, and it's absolutely incredible. It really and truly is to see that fantastic change. And anybody that's interested in coming to service in Limerick ACA, you will be greeted with open arms in Limerick ACA. Cheers, everybody. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm gonna stop the clock now. Give that 2 minutes to the next speaker. Okay. Great. So on to our next speaker. I'm trying to remember the running order. I think it's Lindsay. Yes, great. Phew. So Lindsay is going to talk to us about traditions 4, 5, and 6. You're muted. Huh?
Got it. Thank you. Hold on, what's happened here? Oh, there we go. Thank you. It's our security system for the best of all the groups. So if I have to wave around like an idiot, hi, I'm Lindsay, and I'm definitely an adult child, and I'm very privileged to be talking here today. I remember an old timer once said to me that the 12 steps are there to stop us all committing suicide, and the traditions are there for us to stop committing homicide. And when you think about us all as individuals, we're all mad, some madder than others. And any day of the week, it could be me. And the traditions are the thing that balances us when the madness can take over. They're the structure that says to us, yeah, that may seem a good idea, but have a look at the traditions because it's against the traditions. Now, I'm just going to remind everybody about tradition 4, which is each group is autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or ACA as a whole. We cooperate with all other 12-step programs, which is fairly unique, actually, because I know a lot of other 12-step programs don't like cooperating with other 12-step programs, if that's possible. But for me, this whole thing about being autonomous, we can be free to do what we want in Limerick, which is why we can have the ability to share for the length that we can share, as long as we don't bring ACA into ill repute or cause damage to ACA. And that's why, and this is a classic example of this working, this particular tradition working, is the fact that we always have the promises. We always have the problem and the solution and the promises. You look in the big red book, It says you can use any literature that you like, but you must, or you should, you're suggested very strongly that you should include those three readings. And that's why, despite the fact that we can be a noisy, rabble-rousing lot, and we can share and scream and shout and swear on occasions without causing any problems, because that's not harming ACA as a whole. What we can't do is to not have those readings. And another way that that tradition has come into place within Limerick is the fact that we have 2 meetings that are to do with Pete Walker books. Now, they are not ACA approved. Those are not Limerick ACA meetings. Limerick provides the host in the form of the Zoom account to have those meetings, but they are not ACA approved meetings. And that's why if you go onto the World Service to see Zoom meetings when you want to go, you'll never see those 2 meetings there. You'll never see those 2 meetings there. And it's not because World Service have told us we can't put those meetings up there. It's because Limerick has not put those meetings up there because they don't adhere to the ACA traditions. So those are just 2 really good examples about how Limerick has come back to the traditions the whole time. And the traditions are so important when we have our group conscience. You know, we can, I mean, group conscience, I cannot underline how important it is that people go to the group conscience. I do appreciate that for some people in America, it's unbelievably early in the morning. But, you know, we have roughly sort of 50, 60 people at every meeting, and there've been group consciences where there are literally 10, 12 people there. There should be 50 or 6 people at, at the group conscience, because it's at that point that changes can be made within the confines of the traditions. And it's at that point when, we all rage. And I can want to go to a group conscience meeting and rage about something. And it's that point where somebody might say, Lindsay, tradition 5, tradition 4, tradition 3, and pull me up short. And it's not, for the sake of Jimmy pulling me up short or Caroline pulling me up short. It is that structure that stops us committing homicide. Because left to my own devices, I can be self-will run riot. And the traditions are what keeps me within that. And the other thing about tradition 4 is that, we cooperate with other 12-step programs. And what Jimmy said about the fact that a meeting saying, well, we don't want people from AA, we don't want people from CA, we don't want people from SLA. You see, come to a group conscience and say that, and you can't do that because it's already covered off. That all is welcome. If they believe that they have come from a dysfunctional background, dysfunctional family, doesn't mean if it's an alcoholic, it can be anything. You are welcome here. Which kind of nicely leads me on to the next thing, which each group has one primary purpose: to carry the message to the adult child who still suffers. I grew up with a very hardline sponsor in another 12-step program, similar to Jimmy. And, in other 12-step programs, if there are newcomers, you go back to step 1. If you're in the middle of doing a step meeting, you'll go back to step 1. Even if you're on step 11 and you think, finally, we're going to get to the back of this book, and nope, we're back to step 1. Because there is no one that someone can identify with more than another person who suffers from the same dysfunction. I can talk to some, you can have therapists, you can have doctors, you can have everything that you can ever hear on TikTok or WhatsApp or whatever. You can have all of this stuff, some of which is very useful, but it will never touch somebody's heart as me telling a newcomer that I've been there and I know how you feel. Me telling a newcomer, if there's a newcomer in the meeting and they say it's their first meeting, I will always, whatever step program I am in, I will try and share about how I felt when I first walked into the rooms, how I felt when I saw all these mad people, and believe me, you know, whether it doesn't matter what fellowship you walk into, as far as you're concerned, if you're a newcomer, everybody's barking, excuse me, fucking mad. They are insane. And then they try to give you their phone numbers, and they try and give you literature, and they try and, you know, and all you want to do is put your head down. You know, you want to get well, but you really don't want to get involved. And somebody's sitting there saying, I have been where you have been. I know how you feel, and I will hold your hand until you feel this is a safe place for you. And it's one of the things that I loved about Limerick is this no time limit, that we allow people to find their voice in Limerick. We allow people to rage and shout as they were never allowed to do so as a child, as they were never allowed to show their emotions. So for me, that is such an important thing, that all of us here in these little squares can do instant service and fellowship when the newcomer comes in, because they are the most important person. Because there is nothing that reminds me how, I'm not going to say how well I have got, but I can say how much recovery has taken place than when I see someone who first comes in. When I see the pain and the anguish and the confusion and the lack of comprehension and the disbelief about how we all behave in these little squares, it reminds me why I'm so grateful that I stuck around and I've worked this program and I've done recovery and I've done service. But we should never forget that the most important person in the room is the newcomer. And we also should never forget that, you know, once you've started on this journey, we have a certain response. I mean, I don't know. It's for me, it's like I've got X-ray vision, because I know my inner children. They see somebody who's in pain and they instantly recognize somebody else's inner children that are in pain. And, you know, only last night I was on the beach and I was talking to two young girls, young compared to me, women. And I was talking to them, and one of them, and I'm very open about my recovery. I said, I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for quite some time now. And they asked me what recovery, and I told them both about what I've been doing. And they've all gone off with the Limerick number because they have been in other fellowships and they are still in pain. And I know that I did a bit of service. They may not come this week. It may take them a couple of months to think, or a year. But they've got the Limerick Zoom number. They know where the meetings are, and they know that there is a solution. So I planted a seed, and that's our responsibility in all of these squares, to plant that seed and to hold the hand of the newcomer. And which brings me to my final, I'm getting panicked now. How many more minutes have I got? I'm doing okay. I've got 4 minutes. The final tradition, which is any ACA group never endorse, finance, or lend the ACA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. My God, we are so lucky that we have taken that tradition from another fellowship that nearly made some blinding mistakes. And they didn't make those, that's AA, and they didn't make those blinding mistakes because they grew out of another fellowship called the Oxford Group that made a bucket load of mistakes, that opened their own recovery centres, that affiliated the Oxford name to rehab centres, to clinics, to physicians, and started making a lot of money, and they crumbled. They crumbled. Because we can't rely on anybody except our own fellowship. You know, I mean, there are examples, you know, there's so many very big names that have done AA, and they never talk about AA. And the reason they don't is because the world loves to point its finger at something that they see has failed. And unfortunately, you know, recovery is hit and miss. I love the fact that in ACA, I have learned so much about myself. I made a major fuck up last week, and I had to apologize to a lot of people. And I made a major fuck up because I didn't speak to my sponsor. I spoke to somebody else who also had a best friend who spoke to somebody else who also spoke. So even though I'd said something was confidential, it did the circuit in about 3 hours flat. And I had to go around and apologize. I am going to make mistakes. We're human. And the fact is, and I've just lost my point about making mistakes, nobody can point a finger at me and say I'm hugely famous, and consequently this program hasn't worked. And I don't point a finger at myself and say I fucked up, so this program doesn't work. ACA doesn't work. I am human. I'm going to make mistakes. So the important thing is that we don't give our name to anybody. We keep it as a private, it's a fellowship. It's a fellowship of unity, of people who are all trying to recover at the same time. And AA has worked because it has done exactly the same. There's a wonderful story when Bill Wilson was actually offered vast sums of money to open a clinic, and he was going to do it. And he was so happy because Lois was going to suddenly get all of the things that she had never had before, and he was going to be able to get a lovely house. And guess what? They had a group conscience, and all the fellows in there said, no, you can't do it, Bill. You can't do it because it doesn't work. So we're bloody lucky that we have traditions that have been tried and tested for over 80 years, and they've never failed. And we've been allowed to take them, and we have to uphold them. They are very precious. And they also, as I say, are there to pull in unruly people like me when I get an idea in my head, which is not going to help anybody. And I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
So now we're going to hand over to Billy Kay, who's going to talk about traditions 7, 8, and 9. Over to you, Billy. Here's your clock. You can have 2 extra minutes now because Jimmy didn't use them.
Well, good, because it takes me at least 5 minutes to say my name. Hello, everyone. My name is Billy Kay, and I'll qualify. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. I've had the distinct blessing to have spent 5.5 years as an Alateen sponsor for an Alateen group, and I'm an adult child. My sobriety date, my continuous sobriety date, in my major program of AA and ACA is the 21st of September 1986. So chronologically, I'm coming up on 38 years of doing this work. Realistically, from 7:30 this morning, I'm sober. And that's how my program works, one day at a time. And AA taught me that, how to save my life one day at a time so that I could do this other work. Al-Anon taught me how to mind my own business and keep my nose in front of my face. ACA, this program, has given me my life and taught me about who I really am. Having said all that, I've got tradition 7, 8, and 9, the meat and potatoes one. Tradition 7, AA ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. And it sounds simple enough. But in my time, I have noted and been part of groups where this tradition has not been adhered to. And I have been part of many, many, many more groups where this tradition is strictly adhered to. And the concept behind it, we don't want money to get in the way of what we're doing. What we do is free. There are no requirements for ACA membership. The only requirement is a desire to recover from the effects of growing up in a dysfunctional household. That's it. I've been in meetings all over the world, actually, and I've been in sitting next to guys with Rolexes on, sitting next to a guy that really needed a bath. But we were all there because we all had the desire to change our lives. So it doesn't matter how much money I have or how much money you have. It's the desire, it's the willingness to want to change. ACA World Services, we'll talk about that in the next tradition. Put out a couple, well, it's been a year and a half ago now, that 7-step traditions contributions have dropped down, and their function is compromised. Worldwide pandemic, no baskets, nobody seeing you put your dollar in the basket, they're cheap therapy, buck in a basket. So how do we get that to work? Our groups work on the contributions of the members. ACA Limerick has figured out a unique way to do that in the world that we live in now, and we're all Zoomers, and it's a novel approach. If you like what we do, during, I don't know what the month is, I'll call it October for discussion purposes. In October, we have a fund drive. We want to raise in America $159 to maintain the Zoom account. And then everything else that is collected goes to World Service, or the pie chart over here that we in America use. A pie chart goes to this, goes to that, or however it goes over in Europe. And then it's our responsibility the other 11 months to sell, to make our own contributions. Now, I've been coming to Limerick for, about a year and 8 months. And in that year and 8 months, I've made 450 Limerick meetings. So at $1 a pop, that's $450. It's $1 a week, $1 a meeting, $1 when you can, or a pound, or a euro, or whatever pocket change is in your pocket. Some people can give more. There are some of us, many of us actually, can afford more. But the tradition says that we should pay our fair share. We pay what we can, and we pay our fair share. Why? Because if I come in and I lay down $10,000 because it is that important to me, then we're all people. And then there's someone somewhere along that line that's going to feel beholden to me. And most probably, I will be the one with my nose out of joint that, hey, look, I'm important. I gave you $10,000. Therefore, you know, my word, my say, my presence counts more than anyone else. And that's the problem with money. And Alcoholics Anonymous saw that and understood that. When I got sober, my first sponsor, my grand sponsor, his name wasn't Clancy, but I think it was Charlie. You know, he told me, Alcoholics Anonymous, as it's written right now, is perfect. It is a perfect process, except for all the damn alcoholics in it. That same sponsor took me to Al-Anon. And I said, why do I need to go to Al-Anon? I'm an alcoholic. He says, look around you in a meeting. You're in a meeting full of alcoholics and you need to learn how to mind your own business. And then I got really involved with ACA. So that's, some of the things that I've learned about money. I have never seen a group that when we have been following the traditions, tradition 7, go awry. Pay the rent, prudent reserve, send the rest in. Tradition 8, adult children should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Believe it or not, there are only so many so many adult children around the world that are in recovery. There are a lot more that are not in recovery, but those of us in recovery, there's a lot of things that have to get done. And there's not a lot of people in recovery willing to do that. So there are some situations where for the greater good, ACA talks about being able to employ special workers or service centers to handle things that affect AA as a whole. World Service, for example, they print the literature. They run the business aspect of it. They are compiling and doing the research. They take all our suggestions and evaluate them, and then promulgate downward suggestions to all of us. Nothing that World Service comes up with is a requirement. It's a suggestion, because that's what it is. We should remain forever non-professional. And as the other traditions talked about, each group is autonomous, except in matters that affect other groups and AA or ACA as a whole. Those tied together very well. We're not professionals. This part here is also talks about therapists and running special groups where I can come in and pay for it, pay for my my time spent with someone who knows more. We don't pay for sponsorship. We don't pay for travelership. It's free, freely given, freely received, freely given. And it's up to me as the individual receiving to grab onto it and hold on to it. Tradition 9, AA or ACA as such, I got this, ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. I keep saying AA because I know them. They are burned into my head as AA, because that is where I have watched these traditions save meetings and groups and whatever. I have never seen, I have never experienced a group fail that has been led by a group conscience by a higher power expressed in our group conscience, following the traditions. There's a lot of disagreement. Minority opinion applies, has to be heard, but I've never seen it fail. So Group 9, never be organized. Organization leads to hierarchy. Hierarchy leads to somebody's got to be in charge. If somebody's in charge, that means if I'm in charge, you're not in charge. And believe me, that doesn't set well with this adult child. When I'm told I'm less than. We're not. We're all equal. We're all equal. This is the one of the most equal opportunity organizations that I have ever experienced. A lot of controversy comes around from that because each group is autonomous. So when we have an issue and we say, yeah, but over in Massachusetts, they do this, or over in Germany, they do this. And people get their noses out of, get bent out of shape. It's okay. We can say thank you for your input, but each group is autonomous and we're not organized. And it's great that they're doing that. If it works for them, more power to them. A lot of times that leads to controversy with people who want to change for change's sake because they feel more comfortable. I have 36 seconds, so I have to really wrap this up. I told you I can't talk more. And the traditions will save us from that. If you want to change something at Limerick ACA, next Tuesday morning is the time to change it. Come to the group conscience. Have your voice heard. Put it out there. And then it takes time because you have to let the process work out. The winner is. So that's
sorry, Billy.
That's my 15. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Billy.
Oh, we went to some great lengths today, myself and Heather, to remove that particular sound at the end of the. I'm going to have to obviously have a look at the app again. Okay. Thank you, Billy. Fantastic. And on to our final speaker. Let me just see now if I just need to get rid of that first. I'm going to turn that off. Set. All right. So we have one more speaker for you, and that is Renee. And Renee is going to talk about traditions 10, 11, and 12. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, Caroline, and thank you everyone for being here. I am Renee, and I qualify as an adult child, and I'm learning to become my own loving parent. 47 years ago, not even a teenager, I started my first 12-step program, and it was by accident. I was hiding out in the library. It was on the weekends, and I didn't like to be home on the weekends because my house was full of alcoholics, drug addicts, chaos. So I would hide at the library, and the part of the library I was hiding was an Al-Anon meeting. And in this Al-Anon meeting, they were fucking talking about my life. Everything that I was going through, that I was seeing, that I was witnessing was right there. And I curled up in a ball and I cried. So Al-Anon was my first program 47 years ago. I then took part in alcohol and drugs myself. So not only is Al-Anon a 12-step for me, so is AA, and so is NA. Before I start, it's important for me to remind the group, I'm speaking on how I apply the traditions to my life. in my journey in the ACA groups that I belong to. It's a practice that I learned and continue to learn from my base programs that I mentioned. Most of this information I keep learning, and I really try to apply it to my life along with ACA. And as it was mentioned, I'm going to speak on Tradition 10, 11, and 12. Tradition 10 says ACA has no opinion on outside issues. To me, I apply that to my most important three: politics, religion, sexual orientation, just to name a few. I sum it up as it's not my damn business. It's not my business to be drawn into the controversy or to add my opinion or on any of these issues, which may lead my group into public controversy or controversy amongst ourselves. I need to try to avoid that. If I focus on things that bring controversy to the group or the WhatsApp or anything, all I'm doing is stirring up my inner teenager who loves to argue. She loves to argue. So instead, I find something soothing and fun to do. My teenager and I, my critical parent, we do not participate. It's hard work because they want to be seen, they want to be heard. But I need them to know they can be seen and heard in positive ways. So I hug them. I hug them both. And I do this meditation. Higher power, help me to honor ACA's primary purpose and focus my sharing in meetings on topics of recovery. Help me remember that ACA is a spiritual program. It's not a political program. It's not a religious program, not anything else but ACA. Tradition 11 says our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, films, and other public media. I'd like to give an example of when I listened to Claudia Black. Claudia Black was real. She didn't sit there and she didn't try to push her books. Excuse me. She didn't try to push her rehabs. She didn't try to push her podcasts, her subscriptions, anything. She is one of us, and she spoke about her journey, and she stuck to ACA issues, and she stuck to herself. And that was so meaningful to me. And Tradition 11 means to me that I can attract others to ACA in a way that makes it inviting and friendly. The attraction is me using positive vibes only, as I refer to as PVOs. The other side of this comes promotion, which to me is selling ACA to others. I can drop a hint to anyone regarding ACA and its benefits in a positive way. But like a damn horse, I can bring it to water, but I can't force it to drink. And I can't force selling or promoting the horse to drink it. It's not my business. The horse and the fellow traveler has to want the water, and the fellow traveler has to want recovery. I try to remember promotion involves making promises of results. I'm not God or a higher power. Promotions of any kind, like a mental health video, etc. It could come across to others as a guarantee. I'm definitely not qualified to guarantee any results. I practice not making promises or guarantees. And I also have this meditation when I feel like I need it. Higher power, I ask you to guide me in maintaining my anonymity at the level of all media, because no one speaks for ACA or gives the appearance of speaking for ACA. We attract others to ACA by our good works and the good word of others. Please help me discern when I might break my anonymity for a suffering adult child looking for a way out of confusion, which might be me trying to unsuccessfully bring this person to a meeting, unsuccessfully rant and raving about how great everything is, but they do want it. The person may be a coworker, a family member, Help me know when to share some of my story or when to remain quiet and maintain my anonymity. May I avoid speaking out of turn or using my ego to share with people who may not be interested in ACA. But at the same time, give me the courage to share the program when the moment is right. Tradition 12 says, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Man, that was always confusing to me. Confusing. And one important meaning, treat everyone equally. No authority. When I came to Limerick, it was so hard for me because I was always in American meetings and always that timer, always that person when I was sharing, telling me to shut up, your time is up. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And I felt so much in Limerick. I felt so much unity. I felt so much trust. And I felt like I belonged. And I felt like I was treated equally. Practicing principles doesn't stop with my friends or when I leave a meeting. With that being said, it means I need to prioritize the core principles and values of this tradition, the recovery programs I'm in, and in life situations over any personal conflicts or some ego-driven behaviors that may arise, and I know that I have them within these groups or everyday life. It encourages me to focus on all sobrieties, not just AA, NA, but emotional sobrieties and my own personal growth. This tradition, like I said, it confuses me and it has so many different parts. And I try to remember it emphasizes how important maintaining anonymity is at all costs, including but not limited to meetings, workbook groups, and sponsorship. Under anonymity, I get to practice protecting members, not gossiping about them. I get to prioritize my principles over my personal desires as an adult child that challenges me daily. I may want to argue, right? But that's not benefiting me or my group in any way. So I need to check that inner kid, see why they may want to participate in arguing, and prioritize the reasons I don't want to do that anymore. And it goes back to checking in with my inners. I need to change me. I have to want to change me, not any of you. I practice anonymity to pull in my own ego and to try to do things quietly and to be a positive service team member. When I pull my own ego in, it humbles me and I get to practice humility. Anonymity is my greatest protection in all my recoveries as to why I try to keep our meetings safe. For example, staying updated on security issues. Them intruders can be a pain in my ass. And it's not only my anonymity that I am protecting, it's everyone in the meeting. Everyone. So staying updated on security issues is protecting any meeting or group I'm in. Bottom line for me is I respect the rules of the fellowship. I respect my groups, my meetings, and I don't break the anonymity of others while practicing that. And I want to end this one with another meditation. Higher power, help me see the connecting thread the anonymity brings to the ACA program. Give me the willingness that I need to practice ACA principles instead of a false self personality. Please allow me to put my true self in meetings always. The vulnerable self, the hurting self, the self-reflecting person I am on this recovery journey. That sums up my 3, and I'm leaving you 4 minutes. And I hope y'all got something out of it because the traditions, it keeps me in check. And I do believe that they go hand in hand with the 12 steps. And I believe that they go hand in hand with all the other base programs. And I believe that once you begin to believe in the 12 steps and believe in the traditions, you'll become eager to believe in doing service, because that's the next part of giving. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Renee.